The message arrived on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were when we ran the deep space drills, and I just spent 6 hours in a simulator pod that smelled like recycled farts in desperation. My back ached. My eyes felt like someone had sandblasted them. And then my tablet pinged with a Priority 1 transmission from the Galactic Defense Academy's Central Command. I almost deleted it. Priority 1 messages were always bad news. Training accidents, budget cuts, some admiral's nephew getting promoted over people who actually deserved it. I'd been at the academy for 3 years, and I'd learned that the only thing the brass cared about more than their own careers was making sure nobody else had one. But this one was different. Cadet Commander ELARAVANCE, it read. You have been selected for the KLYXAR ice trials. Report to Hangar 7 AT-600. Bring warm clothing. I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. The KLYXAR ice trials. Every cadet in the galaxy knew about them. They were the final exam, the one that separated the soldiers from the legends. 5 days on an ice planet called KLYXAR 3, where the temperature never rose above -80 degrees and the wind could strip the flesh from your bones. Where the native wildlife could kill you in ways that made xenomorphs look like teddy bears. Where the terrain was so treacherous that even the most experienced survival experts gave it a wide berth. And every year, the Academy sent their best. Every year, most of them didn't come back. I sat there in my cramped quarters, staring at that message until the words blurred together. My hands were shaking. I told myself it was because I hadn't eaten in 12 hours, but I knew better. The KLYXAR trials had a 97% casualty rate. 97%. That meant if you went, you had a 3% chance of walking out alive. Unless you were the best of the best. And I wasn't. I knew that. I was good, better than good maybe, but I wasn't special. I wasn't one of those prodigies who could calculate orbital trajectories in their sleep or field strip a plasma rifle in under 10 seconds. I was just some kid from a farming colony who'd gotten lucky on the entrance exams. But the message was clear. I'd been chosen. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the station's life support systems and wondering if I'd ever hear them again. I'd arrived early, 45 minutes before the deadline, but I was still one of the last ones in. The hangar was enormous, a cavernous space that could hold a dozen starfighters with room to spare. But today it was filled with cadets, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They were the best. I could tell just by looking at them, the way they stood, the way they moved. They had that polished, perfect quality that came from a lifetime of being told you were special. Their uniforms were crisp. Their boots were shined. Their faces were masks of calm confidence that I'd never been able to master. I recognized some of them. There was Cale Morving, the Vitari prodigy who'd graduated top of his class 3 years running. His people had been spacefaring for millennia, and he carried himself like he owned the galaxy. Next to him was Sira T. Kala, an Arixian with 6 arms and a reputation for never missing a shot. She was surrounded by a cluster of admirers, all of them hanging on her every word. And then there was Jax Thorne. Everyone knew Jax Thorne. He was the golden boy, the one who'd broken every record, won every competition, saved every mission. He'd been on the cover of Galactic Weekly 3 times. The brass loved him. The instructors worshipped him. And the cadets, well, the cadets either wanted to be him or wanted to kill him. I was in the latter group. Not because I hated him. I didn't. But there was something about the way he moved through the world, like he'd never had to struggle for anything, that made me want to punch him in his perfect face. Ilara. I turned to find my friend Myra pushing through the crowd. She was small and round-faced, with bright blue skin and hair that changed color depending on her mood. Right now it was a worried shade of pale lavender. "You got the message too?" I asked. She nodded, her eyes wide. "I thought it was a mistake. I'm I mean, I've never even survived a basic survival course." "None of us have," I said. "That's why they call it the ice trials." Myra's hair went a shade whiter. "I'm going to die. I'm going to freeze to death on some forgotten ice ball, and they'll send my parents a medal and say, 'She died with honor,' and nobody will ever mention me again." "You're not going to die. You don't know that." I didn't, but I put my arm around her anyway, because that's what friends did. The chatter in the hangar died down as a holographic platform rose from the floor. Standing on it was Admiral Core, the head of the academy. She was old, ancient by human standards, though her species lived for centuries. Her skin was the color of burnished bronze, and her eyes were like chips of obsidian. She'd seen more battles than most of us had seen sunrises. "Cadets," she said, and her voice filled the hangar without any amplification at all. "You have been chosen for the Kleixar ice trials. You represent the best of your generation, the finest soldiers the galaxy has to offer." She paused, looking over the crowd. Her gaze seemed to land on each of us individually, like she was memorizing our faces. "Some of you will not return," she continued. "That is the nature of this trial. It is designed to push you to your limits and beyond. It will test your strength, your endurance, your will to survive. Only the strongest will emerge victorious." She paused again, and when she spoke next, her voice was softer. "But I want to tell you something. A secret that nobody told me when I was a cadet, standing where you are now." The hangar was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. "The ice trials are not about strength," she said. "They are not about endurance. They are not about will. They are about something far simpler and far more difficult." She smiled, a thin, tired smile that didn't reach her eyes. "They are about staying alive." It was old. The kind of old where the metal on the walls was worn smooth by generations of hands, and the air had a faint smell of ozone and sweat. The seats were uncomfortable. The artificial gravity was inconsistent. The food in the mess hall was, if possible, even worse than the academy's. But I didn't care about any of that. All I cared about was the window. Through it I could see Kleixar 3 growing larger. It was a frozen marble, a world of white and blue and gray with no patches of green or brown anywhere. There were no oceans, no forests, no cities, just ice. Mile after mile of endless, unbroken ice. The temperature on the surface averaged -82 degrees Celsius. The wind could reach speeds of 200 kilometers per hour. The atmosphere was thin, breathable, but barely. And the native life forms, what few existed, were either parasites or predators. Actually, that wasn't quite true. There was one other category, the things that were both. "How are you feeling?" Myra asked from the seat next to me. "Terrified," I said honestly. She laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound that didn't belong in a military transport. "Me too. I've been trying to meditate, but my mind keeps wandering to all the ways I could die." "List them for me." "What?" "The ways you could die, list them. It'll help." She gave me a strange look but started counting on her fingers. Freezing, starving, dehydration, getting eaten by something, getting torn apart by the wind, falling into a crevasse, getting lost, wait, is this supposed to help? Because this is definitely not helping. It helps because once you've listed them all, you realize there's nothing you can do about most of them anyway, I said. So you might as well stop worrying and focus on the ones you can control. Myra stared at me for a long moment. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." "It works for me." She snorted, "You're insane." "Probably." The ship's intercom crackled to life. "Attention cadets, we are beginning our descent to Kleixar 3. Please secure yourselves in your crash harnesses. Expected landing time, 12 minutes. The chorus of clicks and clacks filled the cabin as we strapped in. I felt a familiar lurch in my stomach as the ship tilted into its descent. Through the window, I could see the ice getting closer and closer, until it filled the entire view. The planet was beautiful in a cold, hostile way. The ice wasn't just white, it was all colors. Blues and greens and purples and pinks, like a frozen aurora had been trapped in the ground. Ridges and valleys and peaks, carved by wind and time into impossible shapes. I understood, for the first time, why the trials existed. This place was a crucible. It stripped away everything unnecessary and left only what mattered. It was a test, yes, but it was also a truth about yourself that you couldn't learn anywhere else. The landing was rough. The ship shuddered and groaned and made sounds that didn't sound like a ship should make. I gripped my harness and closed my eyes and tried not to think about how close we were to becoming a smear on the ice. But eventually, the shaking stopped. "Welcome to Kleixar 3, the pilot said over the intercom. "Good luck, cadets, you're going to need it." I'd been in cold before. I'd grown up on a planet where winter lasted 9 months and the snow could bury a house. But this was different. This cold didn't just touch your skin. It seeped into your bones. It found the little cracks in your armor and wormed its way inside. It made you forget what warmth felt like. The wind hit me like a fist. I staggered, nearly falling, and had to grab onto a nearby cadet to steady myself. She was a Taurian, thick-skinned and built for cold, and she gave me a look that was half pity and half contempt. "Get your feet under you, human," she said, "or you'll be dead in an hour." I nodded and let go of her arm. My legs felt like they were made of rubber, but I forced them to hold me up. Around me, the other cadets were doing the same, some more successfully than others. I saw 3 of them fall to their knees, gasping. I saw one of them start crying, the tears freezing on her cheeks. The academy's instructors were there, of course. They stood in a neat line, bundled in the kind of gear that made our standard-issue cold-weather suits look like children's pajamas. They watched us with expressions of grim satisfaction, like they'd been waiting for this moment. "Welcome to your new home for the next 5 days," said the lead instructor, a grizzled human named Commander Voss. He had a scar across his left eye and a voice like rocks grinding together. "You will be divided into teams of 10. Each team will be assigned a starting point and a series of objectives. Complete all objectives and reach the extraction point and you survive. Fail, and you don't." He paused, letting that sink in. "Any questions?" A dozen hands went up. Voss ignored them all. "Good. Your assignments are being transmitted to your personal devices. You have 30 minutes to reach your starting points. After that, we will consider you non-participatory and leave you to your fate." He turned and walked away. The instructors followed. We stood there, 1,000 cadets on a frozen plain, watching our ride back to safety disappear into the sky. The ship's engines were the only sound for a moment, and then they faded, and there was only the wind. "Okay," said someone. "Okay, so that's it, we're on our own." "Shut up, Baron," said someone else. "Just shut up and check your device." I pulled out my tablet. The screen was dim and hard to read in the howling wind, but I could make out the words. "Team 7. Objective 1. Reach the FROSTSBIRE outpost." Then a series of coordinates and a map. I looked around. The cadets who'd been assigned to my team were drifting toward me, pulled by some invisible thread of fate. I counted them off. 10, just like Voss had said. We were a motley crew. There was the Taurian from before. Her name was Grell, and she had the kind of muscles that came from a lifetime of fighting. There was a Vitari male named Soren who looked like he'd never gotten his hands dirty in his life. There were 2 humans, me and a scrawny kid named Davis who seemed to be having a crisis of faith. The other 5 were a mix of species I didn't recognize. A reptilian, a gelatinous blob, a floating jellyfish thing, and 2 creatures who looked like walking rocks. We looked at each other. We looked at the map. We looked at the endless ice stretching in all directions. "Okay," I said. "Okay, here's the plan. We follow the map. We keep our eyes open, we stay close together, and we don't do anything stupid." "Who made you the leader?" Grell demanded. Nobody, I said, but someone needs to be, and I'm volunteering. She snorted but didn't argue. The others seemed content to let me take charge, which was either a sign of good judgment or a sign of despair. We started walking. It looked flat, but it wasn't. Underneath the surface, there were crevasses and caves and tunnels, hidden pockets of nothing that could swallow you whole. Every step was a gamble. Every footstep could be your last. We'd been walking for 2 hours when Soren fell through. One second he was there, walking ahead of the group, his long Vitari legs eating up the ground. The next second he was gone. There was a sound, a crack, a scream, a crunch, and then he was just gone. "Stop," I yelled. "Everyone stop." We froze, huddled in the wind. I crept forward, my heart pounding, and looked down at the hole where Soren had been. It was a crevasse, narrow and deep and impossibly dark. I couldn't see the bottom. I couldn't see anything. "Soren," I shouted. "Soren, can you hear me?" "Nothing." "Throw a flare," Grell said. I reached into my pack and pulled out a flare. The cold made my fingers clumsy, and I fumbled with the activation switch. But eventually the light bloomed, and I dropped it into the hole. It fell for a long time. And then it landed. Soren was at the bottom. He was crumpled and broken, limbs bent at angles that made my stomach turn. His eyes were open, staring up at the light, but they didn't see anything. They were already glassy, already empty. "He's gone," I said. Nobody spoke. We stood there for a long moment, looking down at what had once been one of the best cadets in the galaxy. And then the wind picked up, and the snow began to fall, and the hole began to disappear. "Come on," I said. "We have to keep moving." It was dark by then. Kleixar 3 had a cycle of 43 hours, which meant the nights were long and the days were longer. We'd been walking for nearly 18 hours, and even the strongest of us were starting to show signs of fatigue. The air was thin. The cold was relentless, and the lack of any real shelter was beginning to take its toll. "We need to stop," Myra said. She was shivering so hard her teeth were chattering. I need to rest." "We can't stop," Grell said. "We stop, we freeze." "Just for a few minutes, please." I looked at Myra. Her face was pale, the color of her skin washed out by the cold. Her eyes were bright with exhaustion and something else, fear, maybe, or despair. We'd been walking for 2 days and we'd already lost one of our team. The weight of that was starting to crush us. 5 minutes, I said. "Everyone find some cover and try to warm up." We huddled behind a ridge of ice that offered a little protection from the wind. I broke out the emergency rations and handed them around. They tasted like cardboard in desperation, but they were calories, and calories meant warmth. I was about to take a bite of my own when I heard it. A sound. It was faint, barely audible over the howling wind, but it was there. A scraping sound, like claws on ice. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Grell's head snapped up. "Hear what?" I held up a hand, listening. The sound came again, closer this time. "Something's out there," I said. We scrambled to our feet, weapons drawn. The creatures on Kleixar 3 were legendary, not just for their ferocity, but for their ingenuity. They'd evolved in an environment where survival meant being smarter than your prey. And we were standing in the middle of their territory, tired and cold and vulnerable. The scraping sound grew louder. I could see movement now in the darkness beyond the ridge. A shape, a large shape. It was moving low to the ground like a hunter stalking its prey. "It's a frost stalker," Sierra whispered. Her 6 arms were trembling, each one holding a different weapon. "I've read about them. They hunt in packs. If there's one, there are more." "Where are the others?" someone asked. "Everywhere," Sierra said. "They're everywhere." The shape moved closer, and I could see it clearly for the first time. It was white, like the ice, but with streaks of blue running down its flanks. Its body was elongated, almost serpentine, with 4 legs that ended in razor-sharp claws. Its head was triangular, with rows of teeth that gleamed in the faint light. And its eyes. Its eyes were the worst. They were yellow, like a predator's eyes, but they had a cold intelligence that made my blood run cold. This wasn't just an animal. This was something that knew what it was doing. "Don't make any sudden movements," I said. "Don't run. Don't fight unless you have to. Just back away slowly." "Are you insane?" Davis hissed. "That thing is going to kill us." "No, it's not," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "It's just curious. It wants to see what we are." "That's not what they do," Sierra said, her voice trembling. "Frost stalkers don't get curious. They don't investigate, they hunt. They've already decided we're prey. The only question is when they'll strike." I didn't answer. I was too focused on the creature's eyes. There was something there, something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't hunger, it wasn't aggression, it was calculation. This creature was waiting for something. "Get down," I yelled. I don't know how I knew, but I was right. The frost stalker launched itself at us, claws extended, jaws gaping. It was aiming for Myra, small and weak, the most vulnerable in the group. It had been watching us, studying us, waiting for the moment when we'd let our guard down. I threw myself in front of her, raising my weapon. The frost stalker was fast, impossibly fast, but I'd been training for this my whole life. I fired. The blast hit it in the chest, sending it tumbling back. It landed on the ice with a screech, thrashing and twisting. I fired again and again until it stopped moving. But I could hear them now, the others, coming from all directions. "Run," I shouted, "run now." We ran. Behind us, the howling of the pack filled the night. It wasn't much, just a narrow opening in a ridge of ice that led into a small, dark chamber. But it was out of the wind, which meant it was warmer. Not warm exactly, but not actively freezing. We collapsed in a pile of exhausted, terrified bodies, gasping for breath and listening for the sounds of pursuit. "They're gone," Grell said after a long moment. "I think they gave up." "Or they're waiting for us to come out," Sierra said. "Stop it," I said. "Just stop it. We made it. We're alive. That's what matters." Barely. We'd lost two more in the chaos of the chase, the gelatinous blob and one of the walking rocks. They'd fallen behind, been caught, and were probably being devoured right now. I tried not to think about it. "We can't keep going like this," Davis said. He was sitting in a corner, hugging his knees, his face pale. "We're going to die, all of us. It's just a matter of time." "Shut up," I said. "No, you shut up. You don't get to." I said shut up. He fell silent. The others looked at me, their faces a mix of fear and something else. Respect, maybe, or at least acknowledgement. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down. "We're going to be okay," I said. "We have supplies, we have weapons, we know where we're going, we just have to keep moving." "What about the frost stalkers?" Sierra asked. "One problem at a time," I said. "Right now we need to rest. We'll figure out the rest in the morning." I didn't believe that. I didn't believe any of it. But I said it anyway because that's what leaders do. We slept in shifts, taking turns keeping watch. I took the first shift, sitting at the mouth of the cave and staring out at the endless white. The wind howled. The snow fell. And somewhere out there the frost stalkers were waiting. It was then that I saw her. A figure, a single figure, walking across the ice. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, a hallucination born of exhaustion and fear. But as I watched, the figure got closer and closer, and then I could make out the details. It was a woman, human like me. She was wearing a standard-issue cold-weather suit, but it was torn and ragged like she'd been wearing it for weeks. Her hair was a wild mane of red, whipping in the wind. Her face was streaked with dirt and blood and something else, triumph. In her hands she carried something. It took me a moment to realize what it was, the head of a frost stalker. She was walking toward the cave, toward us. I scrambled to wake the others. "Someone's coming, someone's coming." They were on their feet in seconds, weapons drawn. We watched as the figure approached, her steps steady and sure. She reached the mouth of the cave and looked at us. "Hello," she said. She smiled. "Are you with the academy?" I asked. "Academy?" she laughed. "No, not exactly. I'm just someone who got left behind." Left behind. There was a mission a few months ago, an expedition to the other side of the planet. Something went wrong. The team was lost. I survived. "You've been out here for months." "Something like that." I looked at her, really looked. There was something about her, something in the way she moved, the way she held herself. She was relaxed, almost bored, like she'd been doing this her whole life. "How did you survive?" I asked. She held up the head. "You mean these things? They're not that hard to kill, you just have to know where to hit them." We stared at her in disbelief. She just killed a frost stalker, a predator that had nearly killed all of us, and she was acting like it was nothing. "Can you help us?" Sierra asked. "Please, we don't know what we're doing." The woman looked at us. Her eyes were tired, but there was a spark of something in them. Amusement, maybe. "Help you?" she said. "Sure, I can help you, but first." She walked past us into the cave. She found a spot on the floor and sat down, crossing her legs. "You're going to tell me everything." She was from a planet called Earth, a death world, the kind of place where the gravity was too high and the atmosphere was too thick, and the native life forms were all trying to kill you. I'd heard of Earth. Everyone had. It was the kind of planet that people didn't visit unless they had a death wish. But Zara didn't seem like she had a death wish. She seemed like she'd been born to survive. "You're from a death world," I said. "That's why you're so good at this," she finished. "Yeah, maybe. Or maybe I just learned. On Earth, you learn to survive or you die. It's as simple as that." We told her everything, about the trials, about the objectives, about the frost stalkers and the cold and the fear. She listened patiently, nodding along, and when we were done, she smiled. "Your plan is terrible," she said. "Excuse me." "You're trying to reach the extraction point," she said. "That's fine, but you're going about it all wrong. You're traveling during the day when the cold is at its worst. You're not looking for shelter when you need to rest. You're not using your resources wisely." "We're doing the best we can," Myra said. "I know," Zara said, "and that's why you're alive, but your best isn't good enough. Not if you want to make it out of here." "So what do you suggest?" Grell demanded. Zara shrugged. "I know a place, a warm place. There's a research station to the north. It's abandoned, but it's still standing. We could make it there in 2 days, maybe less." "And what about the objectives?" Sierra asked. "Forget the objectives. The only objective that matters is survival. You can't complete the trials if you're dead." "But..." "Look," Zara said, her voice hardening. "I've been out here for months. I've seen more cadets die than I can count. They all had the same thing in common. They thought they were invincible. They thought they could beat the planet. They were wrong." She looked at us, her gaze piercing. "The planet always wins. The only question is how long you can survive it." We were silent for a long moment. "Okay," I said finally. "Okay, we'll go to the station." Zara smiled. "Good, now get some rest. We leave at dawn." She knew the ice. She knew the weather. She knew the predators. She led us through terrain that would have killed us on our own, pointing out hazards before we could see them and finding shelter before we needed it. She moved like she'd been born on Klixar 3, like the cold was her natural habitat. "What's your secret?" I asked her one night. We were huddled in another cave, waiting out a storm. The wind was screaming outside, shaking the ice around us. "Secret? How do you do it? How do you survive when everyone else dies?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "On Earth, my people learn to survive by watching, by paying attention. When you're on a death world, you learn that the planet is always trying to kill you. It never stops, never sleeps. It's always waiting for you to make a mistake. But how do you keep going? How do you not give up?" She smiled. "Because there's no other choice. You either survive or you don't, and I've never been good at losing. I thought about that for a long time. I thought about all the cadets who died, the ones I'd known and the ones I hadn't. They'd all been good. They'd all been the best of their generation. And they'd all been dead. What made Zara different? I didn't have an answer, but I knew somehow that I'd find it before this was over. It was small, just a few prefabricated buildings huddled together against the wind, but it was intact. The windows were dark, but the doors were closed. The walls were thick. The heating system was still working. I found it a few weeks ago, Zara said. The researchers must have abandoned it in a hurry. There's still food and water, supplies, weapons. We walked through the doors and warmth washed over us. It was such a shock that I nearly collapsed. The others felt the same. I saw Myra start to cry, her tears melting on her cheeks. Get comfortable, Zara said. We'll stay here for a day or two. You need to recover. We settled in, exploring the station like children in a candy store. There were bunk beds and a kitchen, and a lab with equipment I didn't understand. There were ration packs and frozen meals and a stockpile of ammunition. We could stay here forever, Davis said. We could just wait it out. No, I said. We have to finish the mission. We have to reach the extraction point. Why? Grell demanded. Why does it matter? There's nothing waiting for us out there but death. Because we're soldiers, I said. We made a promise, we have to keep it. To who? To the Academy. They sent us here to die. They don't care about us. I looked at Grell. She was right. The Academy didn't care. They never had. They'd sent us here because they wanted to see if we were strong enough to survive. If we weren't, well, there were always more cadets to replace us. But I couldn't give up. Not now. Not after everything we'd been through. We're not staying, I said. We're going to finish this, all of us. I looked at Zara. She was watching me with an unreadable expression. What about you? I asked. Will you come with us? She was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled. Sure, why not? It's not like I have anything better to do. There were more of them this time, dozens, maybe hundreds. They'd been tracking us since we left the station, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now they were everywhere, emerging from the snow and the ice like ghosts. Form a circle, I shouted. Watch each other's backs. We fought. I won't pretend otherwise. We fought like we'd never fought before, like our lives depended on it, because they did. The Froststalkers were relentless, throwing themselves at us in wave after wave. We killed them by the dozen, but more kept coming. Where are they all coming from? Davis yelled. They're coming from the ice, Zara shouted back. They live under it. We're standing on their nest. I looked down. The ice beneath us was cracked and fissured, with dark shapes moving underneath. We were standing on a hive. We need to move, I screamed. We need to get off this ice. But there was nowhere to go. The Froststalkers were surrounding us, closing in. We were going to die here on this frozen hell, and nobody would ever know. And then I saw it. A shape in the distance, a figure running toward us. It was Zara. She'd broken out of the circle and was heading straight for the horde. Zara, no, I screamed. She didn't stop. She ran through the Froststalkers like they weren't there, dodging their attacks and striking back with a fury that was almost supernatural. She was everywhere at once, her movements so fast I could barely track them. She was a whirlwind of destruction, killing Froststalkers with her bare hands and her improvised weapons. And then she reached the center. She found the biggest Froststalker, the queen, I guessed, and she killed it. She drove her weapon through its skull and twisted, and the creature crumpled to the ground. And as it fell, the others began to retreat. They fled, melting back into the ice like they'd never been there. We stood there gasping for breath, watching Zara emerge from the carnage. She was covered in blood, her own and the Froststalkers, but she was smiling. See, she said, not that hard. We approached it slowly, not daring to believe it was real. The Academy's instructors were waiting for us. their faces a mix of surprise and grudging respect. "You made it," Commander Voss said. "I'm impressed." "Don't be," I said. "We had help." I gestured at Zara. Voss looked at her, and for a moment I saw something flash in his eyes. Recognition. "You," he said, "you were on the expedition, the one that went missing." "Yeah," Zara said, "I was. But we checked the records. The entire expedition was declared dead. There were no survivors." "Obviously, your records were wrong." Voss stared at her for a long moment, then he nodded. "I see. Well, you're welcome to come with us. We can debrief you at the academy." "Thanks," Zara said, "but no, I think I'm done with the academy." "What will you do?" Zara shrugged. "I'll figure something out, I always do." We said our goodbyes at the ship. Myra was crying. She'd been crying for the last hour, tears of relief and exhaustion. Grell gave me a nod that was almost respectful. Davis shook my hand like he was afraid I'd break. "Thank you," I said to Zara. "I don't know how we would have made it without you." "You would have figured it out," she said. "You're stronger than you think." "Will I see you again?" She smiled. "Maybe. The galaxy's a small place." And then she was gone, walking back across the ice, a lone figure in a sea of white. I watched her until she disappeared. We were treated like heroes. The brass shook our hands and patted our backs and gave us medals they probably thought we deserved. They talked about our courage, our determination, our will to survive. They made speeches about how we were the best the galaxy had to offer. But I couldn't stop thinking about Zara. She'd been out there for months, surviving on her own. She'd killed Froststalkers with her bare hands. She'd saved our lives without a second thought, and when it was over, she'd walked away like it was nothing. "What do you think happened to her?" Myra asked me one night. We were in the mess hall, eating the kind of food that had never tasted better. "I don't know," I said. "I hope she's okay." "Me too." We were silent for a long moment. "There's something I never told you," I said. "What?" "During the trial, when we were fighting the Froststalkers, I saw her. I saw her fighting, and it was like she was born for it, like she'd been doing it her whole life." "She grew up on a Deathworld," Myra said. "She probably has been doing it her whole life." "I know, but it was more than that. It was like she was happy, like she enjoyed it." Myra looked at me, her eyes wide. "That's terrifying." "Yeah," I said, "it kind of is." I thought about what she'd said, about how the planet always wins and all you can do is survive. I thought about how she'd faced impossible odds and come out on top. I thought about how she'd done it all without anyone's help, without anyone's approval. She was everything I wanted to be. But she was also something else, something I couldn't quite understand. She was free, free in a way that I'd never been, in a way that I didn't think I could ever be. She didn't care about the academy or the brass or the rules. She just did what she had to do to survive. And maybe that was the real lesson of the Kleixar ice trials. It wasn't about strength or endurance or will. It was about letting go of everything that didn't matter and focusing on what did. It was about realizing that the only thing that really matters is staying alive. I never saw Zara again, but I thought about her every day. It was a big ceremony, the kind with speeches and medals and proud parents crying in the audience. I stood in my dress uniform and listened to the speeches and shook the Admiral's hand and smiled for the cameras. But my mind was somewhere else. It was on Kleixar 3, on the ice, on the girl who'd survived when everyone else had died, on the girl who'd made the impossible look effortless. I still don't know where she is. I don't know if she's alive or dead, happy or sad, alone or surrounded by friends. I don't know if she ever thinks about us, about the scared cadets she saved on that frozen hell. But I hope she does. Because she taught me something that day. She taught me that survival isn't about being the strongest or the fastest or the smartest. It's about being willing to do whatever it takes. It's about never giving up, even when everything seems hopeless. It's about finding a way to keep going, even when the planet is trying to kill you. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life.